criticism. Okay, so we're not going to talk about like, oh, the storyline could have been better, because the premise is a bit interesting one lah. But we take it at what it is. So we're not going to dissect the movie on that kind of level. The angles should have been better, the lighting no good, not that kind of thing. Instead, we want to focus on what we can learn from the movie. What messages can we take up from the movie? And true to the CFF spirit, how can we find goodness and God in this movie, and perhaps kind of take it with us and share it with others? Okay. All right. That's enough about my little preamble spiel. As I shared, my name is Keith, and we have the pleasure of having one very lovely panelist today. His name is Charles Lim. He's in the EXCO of the Catholic Business Network. That's him. There you go.
Okay, hi everyone.
It's actually my first time talking to Charles, but we're going to enjoy this conversation very much. I understand you, Charles, you are a lifelong learner. You used to be at Procter & Gamble for a really long time, became a senior leader in that position. But more than anything, I think the fact that you have 3 kids and that this is a movie really centered on family and on raising a child, I think that part of things comes in most in this discussion. So perhaps I'd just like to start this conversation off by asking you, what are your immediate thoughts and feelings after watching that movie?
Okay, thank you so much, Keith, and it's good to be here. And let's first probably talk about the cinematography. No, I'm sorry, that's not what you want me to talk, right? Yes, I think this movie is I'm a movie buff also, by the way. I watch a lot of kind of movie, and this kind of movie, it's always make your heart warm, right? I mean, it makes you feel really good. And it's make me, remember all this fondness of, being a parent. I mean, my kids now are big. I'm 27, 22, 17. So it's a very different kind of, parenting that we're doing right now. But it's really give us, this feeling of, as a parent, I think this is all about love. I think the movie is about love. That's how I feel it. And I think a lot of time, we start not with love, but with what we want, with a more selfish, objective, right? We want to have a kid because it's going to be, our bloodline. I mean, we're going to be able to tell other people that, there will be a next generation and stuff like that. But I think this movie, it's telling us that it's not about that. It's about love. And even when, you are tried because you can't get a kid, in the case of Cindy and Jim, if you believe, if you have hope, if you have faith, and then some miracle happen. And that's, I think, open up them at the end that it is not about their own, but it's about sharing love. And with Lily, so that's how I believe it's all about love. And there's a lot of things, we can talk more about it, that actually it's very human as well as it's very spiritual feeling, kind of learnings from there. So I will start with that.
I totally agree. There's indeed so much we can talk about, so many of the different relationships in the story. But I just want to pick up on something that you shared, in particular about how, having children, it's a big responsibility. And perhaps, people generally raise their kids in the manner in which they were raised, and perhaps thinking to themselves, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to be a little better than my parents because perhaps I know a little bit more, or I've read a little bit more, or I feel like I want to do things a bit differently. So I think a part of that dynamic came out, when we saw like Jim and Big Jim, his father, like, you weren't there for my games. I'm going to be there. I'm going to have my sons back and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to follow up on that and ask you, as a parent, obviously we want, I imagine you want your child or your children to succeed, but how much is it, how is it, or what is more important to you, that they grow up being successful or they grow up being people with really good hearts like Tim? Obviously the ideal is some sort of a balance, but what would you say about that? And perhaps what would you also say about how you raise your children? How do you strike that balance between, wanting them to be, in a way, better versions of yourself, but also allowing them to grow into their own?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's actually you gave me some good words that I should have used before, but I didn't use that, which is good heart, you know, and that's probably the right one. But I think from my perspective, first of all, I think parenting is very difficult. I always say, you know, I can do all the work that I need to do in the corporate life when I was there for 27 years. And now with all the things that I'm doing, it's much easier than being a parent because you never know how, you know, the result of your parenting, right? And I used to say to myself and to my wife and to people that, hey, let's see when our kids are 30, then we probably can start seeing whether, you know, we are doing a good job. And now my first one is 27. I don't think 30, you know, I would be able to see anything. So it will be much longer. It will be probably, I will never know, right? But in my personal point of view, I always believe, and this is what I said to my children, I want them to be happy, not necessarily successful, because I believe if you're happy, you're successful. But if you're successful, you may not be happy. And second one, happiness only can be measured by you, but successful can be measured by many other people, and they'll tell you this is success. This is what you need to have. This is what you need to do. But happiness, nobody can tell you. Only you can feel it, because to your point, it's not about mind, but it's also about heart. You can feel it. And actually now, as I'm growing older and I'm also having my own spiritual journey, it's actually facilitate the discussion with my children much better. Because when you talk about happiness, you go back to your relationship with God. Because if you talk about the heart issue, you're talking about God. Because heart, you know, is not something that, like I said, it's something they can discuss with people. It's how you feel. And I do believe from a long time ago, and I still believe that the existence of God for me is very simple. It's the warm feeling when I hug my baby. I mean, that is where the presence of God, because that is cannot be explained. And it's so good. You know, it cannot be something that is, you know, just happened by accident. This love, this feeling of love, it's something that comes from something very good. And that's, to me, is our God. You know, he created us in his image, and it's all good. And that is the representation for me about that. And that is become something that I continue having, you know, conversation with my children. Now, in my current, you know, stage, I keep telling them, you know, I keep praying that hopefully, you know, all of them and myself and my wife and all of us would be a vehicle of God to glorify his name and do good for others. But frankly, when they were young, that was not the language that I used. I always said, I want you to be happy, so that will actually free you from so-called the measurement from your environment, because that's only you can actually measure whether you're happy.
I think that's very true. That's very true. The measure of what people, you know, people have different markers for success, different ways to measure success. But ultimately, at a very personal, individual level, you'll know if you're happy, and you'll know also if you have that presence of God. You know, if you feel that you're at peace with what you're doing, if you're truly feeling an authentic sense of joy. You know, so maybe not just even like happy, like eat ice cream and become happy, but really a deep sense of joy and contentment with life. And just building on that, I liked how you shared that, you know, it's important to see goodness also in people. And I think perhaps as parents, and hearing you say, I'm not a parent, by the way, not yet, but hearing you say that parenting is not easy. I know it's not. I don't think it is. But perhaps also it's important every now and then for parents to see the goodness in themselves, you know, the good ways in which they have been raising their kids. Give yourself some credit, yeah, and also see the goodness in the children. Like like in this movie, I really like that the couple, for the most part, they really worked together. They were together in everything, you know. And if you want to bring out the Catholic social teaching for that, it's principle of association, you know. So they really went through one another, spoke with one another openly about the good things, bad things, and they were also able to see a lot of the good in Tim, who himself was a really good-natured boy. I love how he will, you know, while everybody is focusing on winning the match, for example, you know, or the soccer matches, he was more concerned in hydrating people. Wow. That's quite cute. That's quite cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on another point. This one is a bit random, okay? It might seem a bit random. So just moving away from the parenting kind of topic, we also saw that there's this new kind of pencil which Tim suggested to the parents, um, and eventually it was suggested to Mr. Crude Stuff, I think his name is. And
Yes.
they had to choose a name like that, Crude Stuff, very
Crude
crude
stuff.
stuff.
Yes.
But and eventually it was made. But so here we see something about the dignity of work, where credit should be given where credit is due. Do you have anything you want to say about that, especially in the corporate world, where people, even Catholics, I imagine, are trying to, in a way, you kind of have to compete with your peers. You kind of have to stand out. But how can we do that? Well, in a manner in which we are being true Christians, So we are giving a good account of ourselves and hopefully not stealing credit from others. But how can we be good Christian people in the marketplace, for example?
Yeah, that's a very important and difficult question. But if you don't mind, Keith, can I just respond to the earlier point that you mentioned about parenting? I think that's one part that I'm really kind of touched, and I really like that. It's when they came back. This is early in the movie, when they came back from the hospital, when they got this really a bad news that they cannot actually conceive by their own, and then Cindy was really down, and that night Jim was a kind of bring her up again. He said, "One more time, let's talk about having our kid," and that's basically the beginning of everything. But it's just reminded me of something that I've just read also, because it's a part of my study today. It was in James, a letter, I think chapter 5. It's talking about, we sometimes forget that we pray, but it have to be coupled with passions. So praying is important, but being patient with our prayer is even more important, because you never know. It's God's actually give us all this blessing on His time, right? And then we cannot just measure it by our time, because we never know. And I think the fact that Jim still had that faith and say, okay, let's try one more time. It just reminded me of the importance of passions and praying here. Okay? Now, this movie, of course, is not a Catholic movie. I'm interpreting it in my own faith. But I think it's important to look at it that way. It's a very difficult situation. I mean, we need to pray, but we also need to be passionate. So this is linking to what you were saying earlier. Now, let me go back to your question about, at work, right? I think there's a misconception of how Catholic or Christian needs to be at work. I mean, like, for example, you look at what happened in the movie, right? I mean, as a Catholic, we would say, hey, I mean, that's okay, because it's good for everyone. At the end of the day, it's my idea, but, if somebody else claim it, that's fine, because it's still good for everybody. And Jesus always told us that, hey, it's okay. I mean, be humble, that's fine. If somebody hit you on your left cheek, give the right cheek. I think that's true as well. I think the humility is definitely a big part of it, because that helps us actually, because it brings us to continue coming up with something to keep learning. But at the same time, I think the key point here is we also need to bring the truth in everywhere we go, including at work. In this particular situation, it's not about the parents, right? It is about what the staff son did was wrong. The behavior was not right. And I think you need to call it out. And that's what we need to do. We need to look at not necessarily on the benefit. If it is directly the benefit for us, maybe we can let go and say, it's okay. Maybe God worked through us. And then for help that person, maybe that person need more credit than us in our work. And it happened to me in my work as well, and said, that's okay. Maybe that's how God works through us. But if it is involving something which is dishonest, some behavior which is not right, then we need to then go back to when Jesus went to the synagogue and saw, people use that for selling, for gambling. Then you need to, you need to bring the lion out, right? I mean, and then when Jesus came in and then just throw everything. This is a balance that I think we need to have at the workplace. The Catholic faith, or the Catholic leadership, so-called the servant leadership, has been seen many times, and I've given the same feedback. I mean, they didn't tell me from the Catholic perspective because I didn't bring my faith. Right? I mean, we're a secular organization, but they'll give me a feedback that you're too weak. You need to be, stronger. You need to be firm. You need to push back. That is a show of leadership. And I always said, no worry. I know, when I need to bring my lion out. But most of the time it's okay. I'm meek. I'm a kitten because I believe that's what we need to do. And most of the time, if we learn from Jesus' journey, Jesus is like that. He's always come with love. He's always trying to do. Now it's very difficult. Please, I do not trying to send you a message that I'm actually like that. I mean, I fell and keep learning even up to today. But I think it is important to balance the two. Okay. Most of the time, we will bring our humility. If the credit goes to a person just because of the credit, maybe God wants us to give them the chance they need more. That's usually what I think. They need more. But if it is involving something which is not right, it's not about the truth, it's dishonesty, I think we also need to have the responsibility to bring it out and correct it. Okay. That's what I believe. Thank you.
I think that's a very good response. To have that that courage, and in the context or in the times when it is necessary to speak the truth, or in this way, in a very, but of course, fraternal correction with a measure of love, also done with love. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
so Chris, Chris Tay just put it in the chat a few moments ago, sharing also about how it's a beautiful film. Yes, several people have said that, indeed. And he's also picked on the point about how Tim's autumn leaves, there's a certain beauty and magic of Tim's autumn leaves that touch people's heart and will be remembered. Yeah, so I just want to pick up on that because I do agree. The leaves provide a very nice metaphor, and at the end, he shared about how the leaves are gifts that he gives to people. I really love that. Except that I think the difference is we don't have a limited number of leaves. We have these leaves that we can always give away for as long as we are alive, I suppose. The question is whether we really are intentional about giving out these gifts or sharing these gifts that we have, whether it's your talents or even material possessions, your time, talent, energy. Yeah, I really like that. Do you want to say anything about this, Charles?
Yeah, I think the message is really beautiful, and I think there are two messages that I got from that metaphor. The first one is he keeps saying that the time is short. People will move on, and that's true. I mean, our time is short, so that means that we should make sure that in this short time we give, and that's the first one. The second one is when we give, it's something from us which is actually attached to us, so it's actually showing that it's very important. Because if he keeps giving, at the end he will lose, his life. So it's something very dear to us, and that's actually, I think, the question to us and to myself also when I reflect on on that metaphor. First, do I really look at my time as short, or I said, okay, that's fine, I can do it tomorrow. Today, it's not easy to do, so maybe I don't do it. And then I'll go confession and say, I'm sorry, God, I haven't done that, forgive me. I'll do it next time. So we always thought that there's a next time, but hey, there's no next time. Maybe time is short. We just don't realize it, right? So we need to start doing it now. I learned also today, in my study that when you go to purgatory, you cannot do anything. You need to get prayers from other people. So you better do it while you are alive right now. And second one, the question is, do we really give something that actually hurt us, right? Well, I won't say hurt in a way, but you know what I mean. It's really hurt. It's not something that you can say is dispensable, is okay. As far as I'm okay, it doesn't touch my core, that's fine, I'll keep giving. Is that something that is actually going to hurt you? And that, I think, what I learned from Timothy here, when he gives, he only have 8 or whatever, I didn't count. But one is gone, he is gone. It's something really fundamentally important to him, and he is willing to give. And I think that's a great lesson to us. It's very difficult to do, but it's a great lesson for me as well. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. I I really love it.
Yeah,
And the fact that he also, it's associated to a memory that eventually is given to a person
yes,
also. It's amazing,
yeah,
It kind of reminded me of this idea of how the good that we do, that, and that, let's say I say something nice to you, and you feel that love, okay? And there's a ripple effect. You share that to someone else.
yes,
I will not know how my good has been multiplied or how my good has traveled. I will only know of the memory of what I did. Hopefully we do have the consciousness at the end of each day to also recognize the good in ourselves, the good that other people have done to us,
yes.
and remember that. But the full impact of how our goodness has traveled, I suppose we'll only know also when the time comes, lah, right? When all our sins and all our good deeds are laid bare before us. But I suppose the important thing, nevertheless, is to do it now. Do it now. You feel the
Yes,
prompting, go and do it.
yes. Plant the seed, pay it, then hopefully it will pay forward, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It's
Uh,
wonderful.
by the way, if for all those who are still hanging around, thank you very, very, very much. I'll probably have another about 5 minutes or so. If you have any comments, any thoughts, anything, any wisdom that you want to share, maybe the spirit has touched you in a certain way, share it. Share it. Good things must share, lah.
Please join us. We are really feeling lonely here, only the two of us.
Like we know you're there, but
Yeah.
we want to feel your love a little bit more. But yeah, just going back to the leaves again. See, like the leaves still in my mind now. But I something that I really liked about it also was, there was a part where they wanted to get it trimmed off because they thought it's like a weird thing, lah, or something that didn't belong where it should be. But it couldn't be taken away, right? So instead, the scissors kind of gave way. Yeah, so I like that image of how the good that we have in us, or the gifts that we have in us, can never be taken away. It's
Yeah.
for us to give away.
Yes. That is wonderful. Yes, that is so true. And I think sometimes people are trying to do that, and we should just have this faith that it is in us. I mean, it's God's blessing, it always be there. It will not go away. It can only go away if you're consciously giving it in your life,
Yeah,
before you leave this, this world.
yeah, yeah. That reminds me of that famous but sometimes difficult to understand that quote by Jesus. When he says, "Those who keep their lives will lose it, but those who lose their lives for the sake of my name, for the sake of the gospel,
Yes.
will gain it to the full."
Exactly. In the kingdom of God.
That's right. That's right. Okay, I think I'll just look at one other relationship in the story, and this is relating to the two young ones. So Tim and Joni, I think her name is Joni, right? And they connected because of how they were different. I like that very much. Do you want to say anything about that also, Charles?
I think it's very, very obvious, and this message is very clear, especially if this is watched, I think, by the younger crowd, that it is okay to be different. As far as you have a purpose. Look at what they did, right? They had a purpose. They created this world which is wonderful, which is colorful, right? And they went there every time doing that, right? Now the danger is if you are different and you don't do anything with that, you don't have a purpose. So I think back to parenting, my kids are all very different. I just need to support them. But I need to make sure that they are clear about what is their purpose, starting from, what is the gifts of God, what's their talent. And we help them to move towards there. So it's okay to be different, but with a purpose. That's, I think, what I got, from there. It's a wonderful relationship that they have, but they have created something wonderful, aside from relationship, but also something that is so beautiful, that's showing the beauty of, of God through nature.
I agree. Yeah. Esther just commented, thank you so much for the comment. She says, the theme of this film is empowering and imaginative. I agree. The leaf metaphor, very imaginative. And also the whole, I mean, some film critics, if you're going to read the film critic reviews, they probably won't, they probably think the movie is quite corny and all that, with the premise, it's very hard to believe, blah, blah, blah. But it's still very imaginative. Can't fault the filmmakers for that. So Esther continues
It's a
by saying,
fantasy. You don't have to prove a fantasy. You
That's
need to
true.
just understand the the
Yeah.
message behind.
Yeah, we need to. I think it's good for us to be children sometimes, like, you know, to think
Yes.
and dream of like a child. Sometimes we lose that wonder, that sense of wonder. So Esther continues, she says, it makes us move away from the norm and to embrace what we feel deep down in our hearts and to love. I agree. I think children have this innate ability, especially to love freely and be loved, because they're not so encumbered by the world's stresses and worries the way
Limitation.
adults are.
The limitation from the world.
Yes.
They can
So
just go through that.
yeah,
It's wonderful.
that's what we do to ourselves, adults. We allow the world to.
You put a box. We put a box because other people put a box on us. And
Yeah.
we put it to our children sometimes.
That's right, lah. You know, it's like a
I'm as
projection,
guilty
lah.
as others.
Yeah, a projection of yourself you put on your children. You will do this. You will be like this. You know.
Actually, Jim said something. He said, if
Mm.
you are on the bench, you will
Yeah.
be also on the bench in life.
Mm.
That's what he said, right? I mean, that I
Yeah.
think is very, very important phrase, you know, for us to also reflect, right? Because we put that box. When he was young, the father put that box in him, and he believed that even in life, which is of course not true.
Mm. Mm.
Thank you, Esther. That was very good.
Yes. Yes. I think we're almost out of time. So I'll just conclude with one other thought. Actually, it's something that Charles mentioned at the start. You know, so in line with this idea of really dreaming and having this sense of wonder as a child, and really trusting that perhaps with God anything is possible. We heard that line said a few times in the movie. So much is possible if, I suppose, if you have faith that it could happen. Yes, Charles, you agree? I see you
Yes,
nodding furiously.
Amen. Totally agree with that.
Yes, yes. But that being said, as we conclude this conversation, I also want to say, because you know, I have a goddaughter, for example, who's been trying to have children for many years, many years, and she's had, I think, something like 3 miscarriages so far. And there's a sense there, you know, there's a sense of heaviness there, that why is it that my deepest desires and something that I prayed for doesn't come to fruition? Why is God not making this possible? So I think to this, I mean, I also struggle to give her answers or wisdom or anything to help her, apart from just encouraging her to continue to trust and have faith in the bigger plan that God has. That's all I could do.
Be patient and pray.
Indeed. Any final words from you, Charles, before we land this plane?
Well, not really, but I think, you know, it's great to be here and watching, you know, the movie and also discussing it. And I think this is just another example of there's so many messages that we can just get from movie or from whatever we see around us, and see how God's actually sending us messages. And thank you for your, you know, for your facilitation, and, you know, some of the conversation we have. We have fun. Thank you.
Yes, you're most welcome, Charles. Big thank you to Charles, who's helped to be our panelist here in this movie. A big thank you to every one of you for joining us this Saturday afternoon. Also, huge thank you to the people behind the scenes who have made this screening happen. To all of you in the Kena Film Festival team, including Winifred, Ben, Prasad, Isabel, well done. Keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, look forward to all the future screenings. By the way, if you really like, where the Catholic social teaching in this movie, if you are trying to, thinking along the lines of that, I can just flag out 3, and perhaps you can go and reflect on these and try and see how I have drawn these social teachings out. Okay, so but the ones that came very strongly to me were principle of association, where we are in this together, especially in the basic unit of society that is family. So we saw this in Jim and Cindy, as well as in the relationship between Tim and Joni. So even in their differences, they saw and associated with one another. There's also a dignity of work, as we saw, working hard, the people in the pencil factory, and also the element of speaking truth in the workplace, which we spoke about, being courageous and witnessing at the workplace. And I think there was one more. No, the other one is just love. that is like the universal social teaching. If you can love people, all people, we'll be great. The world will be a much better place. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. We trust, we hope, and we look forward to more conversations like this in future. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a blessed
Thank
weekend.
you. Have a blessed weekend. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you.